everyone. Welcome to Lunenburg Library's Fresco Storytime. It's good to be with you again today. Won't be long before we'll be able to be back outside on the patio. That warm weather last week really helped to get rid of the snow. So let's start our story time as we always do, and you can see I have my friend Mr. Fresco here to listen to us as we sing along. All right, you ready, Mr. Fresco? Hello, friends. Hello, friends. Hello, friends. It's time to say hello. Well, Mr. Fresco, guess what? Today we're going to be telling stories by a wonderful author whose name is Cynthia Rylant. And that woman has written over 100 stories. That's a lot of books for children. She's very good at what she does. And the two that I chose, because I don't have time to read that many, but the two stories that I chose today are about La Familia, families. And in one story, there's a woman who doesn't have very much family around. And in the other story, there's lots of familia. So let's get started. Our stories today were written by an author called Cynthia Rylant. And Cynthia Rylant has lived all over the country, but right now she's living out on the West Coast. She's out in Oregon. She's still continuing to write stories today. This one is called The Relatives Came. Let's see if you can relate to any part of this story. It was in the summer of the year when the relatives came. They came up from Virginia. They left when their grapes were nearly purple enough to pick, but not quite. And there they are, getting in their car and heading off for their road trip. Can you see all that luggage that's going to go into the trunk of that car? Yikes. They're bringing lots of stuff with them. I think this is going to be longer than a weekend visit. They had an old station wagon that smelled like a real car, and in it they put an ice chest full of soda pop and some boxes of crackers and some bologna sandwiches. And up they came from Virginia. They left at 4 in the morning. Have you ever been up at 4 in the morning? Oh my goodness, that is really early. It's probably still dark. When it was still dark, before even the birds were awake. Oh dear. Looks like they weren't very careful in the driving. Look what happened. They knocked down their mailbox. They must be very excited. They drove all day long and into the night, and while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses and the different mountains, and they thought about their almost purple grapes back home. And they thought about Virginia, but they thought about us too, waiting for them. They must be so excited. So they drank up all their pop, and they ate up all their crackers, and they traveled up all those miles until finally they pulled into our yard. Oh my goodness, I don't know who's driving this car, but look what happened when they pulled into the yard. Yikes, there goes the gate. I forgot to tell you, Stephen Gamble did the pictures for this book. He is one of my favorite illustrators. I love how he draws pictures. Look at these faces, can you see them? Wouldn't you just love to get to know this man right here? Looks like somebody's favorite papa. Then it was hugging time. Talk about hugging. Those relatives just passed us all around their car, pulling us against their wrinkled Virginia clothes, crying sometimes. They hugged us for hours. I'm guessing it's been a while since they've seen each other. Then it was into the house. And so much laughing and shining faces and hugging in the doorways. You'd have to go through at least 4 different hugs to get from the kitchen to the front room. Oh, those relatives. Looks like pretty exciting times. A lot of people in that house. And finally, after a big supper, 2 or 3 times around, until we all got a turn at the table, there was quiet talk. And we were in 2s and 3s throughout the whole house, catching up on news, as they say. I hope sometime you get to take this book home with you, because the pictures are just amazing. They add so much to the story. The relatives weren't particular about beds, which was good since there weren't any extras. So a few squeezed in with us, and the rest slept on the floor, and some with their arm thrown over the closest person, or some with an arm across one person and a leg across the other. I don't know, what do you think? Could you sleep like that? I don't know. It was different going to sleep with all that new breathing in the house. Look at this person right here. Looks like she's maybe having a hard time going to sleep. The relatives stayed for weeks and weeks. They helped us to tend the garden, and they fixed any broken things that they could find. Nope. This guy right here. He's giving a haircut. They ate up all our strawberries and melons, and then promised that we could eat up all their grapes and peaches when we came to Virginia. Have you ever been to Virginia? Oh, it's a beautiful state. I love Virginia. You've been to Virginia? Yeah. I have relatives who live there now. Oh, what are they doing on this page? This looks like fun. Oh my goodness. They're making some music. They're doing some singing and dancing, I think. But none of us thought about Virginia much. We were so busy hugging and eating and breathing together. Everyone looks very happy, lots of smiling faces. Finally, after a long time, the relatives loaded up their ice chest and headed back to Virginia at 4 in the morning. We stood there in our pajamas and waved them off in the dark. We watched the relatives disappear down the road. Then we crawled back into our beds and felt too big and too quiet. All the relatives are gone now, right? And we fell asleep. You think they're going to miss all that family? I bet they will. Must be like having a party all the time. And the relatives drove on all day long and into the night. And while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses and the different mountains, and they thought about their nice dark purple grapes waiting at home in Virginia. But they thought about us too, missing them, and they missed us. I'm sure that's true. This is one of my favorite pages. What's the color you see on this page? That's a purple. Do you know what that is? It's all those dark purple grapes. Wow. And when they were finally home in Virginia, they crawled into their silent, soft beds and dreamed about the next summer. Do you think they'll go back? Yeah, I bet they will. That is a wonderful story about having some family time. That's something over the last year we've kind of missed, I'm sure. And there's a bunch of those purple grapes. They're pretty yummy. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that story. I'm sure Cynthia enjoyed putting it together for you and working with Stephen Gamble to do those wonderful pictures. So as I said, one story was about family having lots of company and lots of people around, And the other story is about a much smaller family. Catherine Brown did the illustrations for this book, and it's called The Old Woman Who Named Things. And I love the way she drew the old woman. Can you see that picture? It's really cool. Once there was an old woman who loved to name things. She named her old car that she drove Betsy. She named the old chair that she sat in Fred. I never heard of anyone naming their chair. She named the old bed that she slept on Roxanne, and she named her old house Franklin. So there she is. Look at her car. That's pretty cool. I don't see those around much anymore. See those things in the back? What do they call those? What do they look like? Yeah, they look like fins. That's what they're called. Every morning she would get out of Roxanne, have a cup of cocoa in Fred, her chair, remember? Lock up Franklin and drive to the post office in Betsy. She always hoped for a letter from someone, but all she ever got was bills. The reason the old woman never got any letters was because she had outlived every single one of her friends. Aw. Well, this kind of worried her. She didn't like the idea of being a lonely old woman without any friends, without anyone whom she could call by name. Do you think maybe that's why she named the things in her life? So she began to name things. But she named only those things she knew she could never outlive. Her car, Betsy, had more get up and go than anything around. Her chair, Fred, had never sagged a day in his life. Not one creak or moan had she ever heard out of her old bed, Roxanne. And her house, Franklin, had been standing straight for over 100 years and still didn't look a day past 20. It is a very lovely home, isn't it? Wouldn't you like to be there? Stop in and pay her a visit. The old woman never worried about outliving any of them, and her days were pretty happy. One day, when the old woman was out soaping some mud off Betsy, telling her that Franklin wouldn't want to be seen with a car that didn't keep its bumpers a little cleaner, a shy brown puppy came to the old woman's gate. The old woman had not named the gate because 2 of its hinges had rusted off, and she could tell the gate wasn't long for this world. The shy brown puppy wagged its tail and it looked a little hungry. The old woman stood beside Betsy and watched the puppy for a while. She said. Then she walked into Franklin, got a chunk of ham from a refrigerator, and came back outside. What do you think she's going to do? Have a snack? Probably not. Think she's going to give it to the dog? Yeah. The old woman gave the ham to the hungry puppy and told it to go home. She told it that Betsy always made puppies sick, and Fred never allowed puppies to sit on him, and Roxanne wasn't wide enough for a puppy and an old woman to fit on. Besides all this, Franklin couldn't tolerate dog hair. So the puppy went away. That's the end of it. Let's see. But the next day, the puppy was back. The old woman was sitting in Fred reading a book on everlasting flowers when she saw the puppy through her window. "Go home," she called to the puppy. The puppy wagged its tail when it saw her. "Go home," she called again. But the puppy just kept on wagging. The old woman noticed that it still looked a little hungry, so she went back to her refrigerator. This time she gave the puppy a hunk of cheese and 2 biscuits. Then she told it to go home, and the puppy went away. That night, as the old woman plumped up the pillows on Roxanne, she thought about the puppy. It was a very nice puppy, she thought. It was a very pretty puppy, she thought. But it couldn't stay. If it stayed, she'd have to give it a name, and it could never last as long as Franklin or Fred or Betsy or Roxanne. She might actually outlive it, and she didn't want to risk that. She didn't want to outlive any more friends. She would just keep telling it to go home. Every day the shy brown puppy came to the old woman's gate, and every day she fed it and told it to go home. And always it went away, and always it came back the next day. This went on for many months. The puppy got bigger and bigger until soon it wasn't even a puppy at all anymore. It was a dog, and it was still a dog with no name. And all this time the old woman had gotten a new dresser that she had named Bill, a new wheelbarrow that she had named Francine, oh, I like that name, and a new concrete pig for her garden that she named Bud. But the dog she faithfully fed at her gate every day still did not have a name. Since it had no name, the old woman didn't have to worry about outliving it, and she thought herself pretty clever in this. She does have a beautiful garden, doesn't she? Love all her flowers. Then one day the shy brown dog didn't come to the old woman's house. She sat and fretted and watched the gate all day long, but the dog never came, and the old woman felt kind of sad. The next day again the dog didn't come, and the old woman drove Betsy around town looking for the dog, but she didn't find it. The old woman started to feel even sadder. Oh dear. The following day, when still the dog did not come, the old woman knew she had to do something. So she picked up the phone and called the dog catcher. "Have you caught any shy brown dogs?" the old woman asked the dog catcher. "Oh, ma'am, we've got a whole kennel full of shy brown dogs," said the dog catcher. "Was yours wearing a collar with a name on it?" "No," said the old woman sadly, and she hung up the telephone. The old woman sat and thought about the shy brown dog, who had no collar with a name. Wherever it was, no one would know that it was supposed to come to the woman's gate every day, that she was supposed to feed it and tell it to go home every day, that things were always supposed to be this way. The shy brown dog had no collar and no name, and no one would ever be able to know these things about it. Kind of sad part of the story. The old woman made a decision. She locked up Franklin and she drove Betsy to the dog catcher's kennel. She said to the dog catcher, what do you think she's going to say? Can I look at those puppies? "Yep, I've come to find my dog." He asked her what color it was. "It's brown," she said. He asked her how old it was. "Oh, about a year old," she said. Then he asked her what its name was. Oh no. The old woman thought a moment. She thought of all the old dear friends with names whom she'd outlived. She saw their smiling faces and remembered their lovely names, and she thought about how lucky she'd been to have known these friends. She thought what a lucky old woman she was. "My dog's name is Lucky," she told the dog catcher. How about that for a name for a dog? I like that. He led her to a big yard full of white dogs and black dogs and brown dogs. The old woman looked and looked and looked, and finally she saw her own shy brown dog sitting beside a gate. The dog was looking at Betsy parked in the driveway. The old woman called out, "Here, Lucky!" And at the sound of her voice, the shy brown dog came running across the yard. I think he was excited to see her. From that day on, Lucky lived with the old woman, and he always came when his name was called. It turned out that Betsy didn't make all dogs sick, and Fred was happy to allow a dog to sit on him, and Franklin really didn't mind a little dog hair. And every night Roxanne was sure to make herself plenty wide enough for a shy, brown, lucky dog and the old woman who named him. I love how that story ends. It's such a great story. So if you want to hang on for a few minutes, we'll get things ready, and then I'll show you what our craft is to go along with this story this time. We'll be back. Hello, everybody. I'm going to now show you the craft that's going to go along with our project today, our story time today. We read this great book by Cynthia Rylant, The Old Woman Who Named Things, and so today, look at how cute this is. You're going to get to make a lucky dog of your own. Isn't he cute? So let me show you how that is going to work. So when you come by the library with your family and you pick up your kit, inside the kit is going to be your set of directions, some pieces of construction paper of various colors that will correspond to the parts of the puppy that we're making. Take these out. Okay, so here's all the pieces of paper. A couple of googly eyes so that our puppy has a way to look out at the world. And again, that's all you need. Oh, and then of course your construction materials, scissors, and our trusty glue stick, and a Sharpie. Okay, so let's get started. Now what I did, just to make this go a little quicker, is I took my template, and which had all these various pieces on it, and I cut them out. And so now the next step, once you cut out all these pieces, then you need to trace them, and it tells you on the template pieces which color paper to use for these parts. So this one says this is the head of the puppy, cut 1 in brown. So the biggest piece of brown paper you have is this one. So I'll let you in on a little tip. If you put a straight edge along a straight edge, that's one less cut that you have to make. And then you just take your pencil and trace around the outside. This is a really good fine motor activity. Trying to stay close to the shape. And when you're done tracing, it looks like this. Okay? And there's also directions. So hang on to these pieces because there are directions that go along with the project written right on the piece. This one has a line down the middle that says fold. Okay, so let's cut this one out. Hopefully you have a good pair of scissors. We're pretty lucky here at the library. We have some good supplies to use, so these are nice sharp scissors, so it makes the cutting a lot easier. This is, if you're a little person and you're just learning how to cut, cutting around curves like that is pretty tricky, so it's always good to start to practice first cutting straight lines. So you might need to ask a big person to help you get to this point. And then, as I said, there are directions on here, and it says there that says fold. So our puppy now has a head. Okay, so the next part we're going to work on are the ears, and this is the piece that you've traced on your other piece of brown. Looks like this. And on your template it says to cut. See that dotted line? When you see that in directions, that means cut. Kind of a universal symbol. So we're just going to cut our heart shape in half. We have now created 2 ears for our puppy. And we're going to glue them on his head. So this is the bottom of his head. And one, got to think about how this works. Okay. One goes on like that, so let's put a little glue on here. Ear. I'm going to move my scraps out of the way. And the other side of his head is the other ear. Okay, so now our puppy has ears. Okay. Needs a nose. That's out of the black paper. Again, I traced and cut mine already. Put his nose right about here. And then, as with most puppies, they often you'll see them with their tongue hanging out. Puppies or dogs actually get rid of body heat through their tongue, so that their tongue hangs out and they might look a little bit drooly, but they're just trying to cool their bodies down. So on the inside, like that, I'm going to attach the tongue. So his tongue's kind of sticking out. He's a happy guy. And then we've attached our nose, and then dogs have whiskers. So here's how I'm going to do the whiskers. Just give little dots like this. Okay, so you have to now imagine that these are some whiskers sticking out of your dog's face. And then, what is he missing? Let's see. He's got 2 ears. He's got a head. He's got a nose, some whiskers, and a tongue. You're right, his eyes. Let's add a couple of eyes. Oh my goodness, he's so cute. There he is. There's mine. So I hope that you get a chance to get one of these kits and make one of these. And you can do it this way, or if you have another way you think it would work to put it together, have at it. Everybody gets to have their own artistic expression of this kit. What we discovered is, now that it's done, it also can be a bookmark. So you can slide it over the corner of your page, and it'll show you where you left off if you don't get to finish the whole story. So thanks for joining me for my Cynthia Rylant story time today. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.